Channel Sports Central will be going over our next final prediction of this offseason, and it will be over the Missouri Tigers, which this was a team that went 6-6 in 2019, and yeah, they made it to 6 wins. They did not qualify for a bowl game, though. Of course, they had a bowl ban last season, but whether or not they'll be able to make it to one in 2020 is what we're going over here today. We're going to be going over a few players that this team will be losing and returning, along with a full preview and also a prediction on every single game in Missouri's schedule. So with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019 for Missouri. Of course, they were 6-6 once again, and they were 5-3 between September and October. However, they did drop off quite a bit in November. They were 1-3. So it looked like this team honestly could have made it to 7 wins last season, no doubt, but that November just kind of dropped off for them. Of course, they did a couple of good wins in there last season. Of course, on September 7th, they beat up West Virginia 38-7. They did a shutout against Southeast Missouri 50-0, and they also had a big win against Ole Miss on October 12th, 38-27. So once again for Missouri, all around, I mean, it was a decent season. I wouldn't say it was a great one, but I mean, this team still, I think, has a ton of potential in 2020 to make it right back to a bowl game. As far as your returning production goes, you lose your starting quarterback, Kelly Bryant. Of course, he transferred in from Clemson after the 2018 season. And yeah, this Missouri team, I'm pretty sure if they would have been eligible for a bowl game, I'm sure the motivation would have been much better for this team last season. And yeah, they easily could have gotten to 7, maybe even 8 wins with Kelly Bryant. I mean, he did have a bit of a down season compared to how most of them expected to do. He had just over 2,200 yards with 15 touchdowns and 6 interceptions last season, so he did have a bit of an accuracy issue last season. But overall, I still think he's a pretty decent quarterback. And yeah, but nonetheless, they also returned their top running back, Larry Roundtree, which he had just right around 900 yards last season with 9 touchdowns. So that's going to be big. Of course, this is a big rushing team last season. They also had Tyler Beatty, their second running back. He had just 813 total yards last season with 8 touchdowns. And actually, he was a big receiver too. He had 356 receiving yards with 5 touchdowns last season. So Tyler Beatty was kind of split up between being a full-time running back and a receiver. But yeah, once again, Tyler Beatty was second in receiving yards as well. They also lose their top receiver, Jonathan Nance, which he had just right around 500 yards with 4 touchdowns last season. So once again, this was not a very big receiving team last season. They do return their wide receiver 2 and 3 with, of course, Scott and Knox. And Jalen Knox in general, he had 300 yards with a touchdown. Kind of the same thing with Scott. Right around the same amount of yards as Knox had. They also returned their tight end, Albert. He had just over 300 yards along with 6 touchdowns along with that. So with that, they do lose 3 on the offensive line, though, so that is a bit of a concern for me. Of course, with the offensive line and having to have a new quarterback next season, that does bring up a little bit of a concern, but they do only have 1 loss on the defense, though, which is good, which is a defensive tackle. And that brings up the question, chances for Missouri to be an SEC dark horse. Of course, they're returning quite a bit, so it would definitely make sense for this team to be a dark horse, possibly going into 2020. However, I would say for Missouri, if they can get a good quarterback to replace Kelly Bryant and they can get someone under center that really knows what he's doing and he does a great job, puts up at least 2,500, possibly even 3,000 yards, I definitely think Missouri could be a team that could be a big contender in the SEC in their division as well. I mean, of course, we saw Kelly Bryant last season. He did not really live up to the expectations, but then again, I mean, he wasn't quite healthy the entire season too. You can't forget about that. But that also brings up the question, how much effect will losing Bryant have on this team? Of course, last season, he didn't put up all that great of stats. I mean, he did put up over 2,200 yards, but still, I mean, for any normal quarterback, that is not all that impressive. So I think losing Bryant will have an impact, but I don't think it will be too great. I mean, he wasn't a long-term quarterback for Missouri. He only was there for 1 season. So that doesn't really concern me all that much. But if they do get a good quarterback to replace Kelly Bryant, once again, I do think Missouri, I mean, they've got the running back talent and they also have the receiver talent. I think that Missouri definitely could be a team that could definitely get up to a good 7-8 win season, possibly even 9, who knows. As far as your schedule goes, you start off the season against Central Arkansas on September 5th, followed by a Vanderbilt game. Then you'd have your first road game at South Carolina, followed by a game against Eastern Michigan on September 26th. As far as your October goes, you got Tennessee and BYU both on the road, followed by Georgia and Kentucky. Then in November, you got Mississippi State and Florida both on the road, followed by 2 home games with Louisiana and Arkansas. So, overall this schedule, I mean, I'd say your toughest month would have to be October in general going into November. Of course, you got to play Mississippi State and Florida both on the road, and then in October you got Tennessee on the road along with Georgia. So there are several tests on the schedule. The good thing is for Missouri is that they do not have to play LSU or Alabama. That is that's a big positive for this team. Honestly, they do not have all that difficult of a schedule compared to how some teams have it in the SEC. But here's what I'm expecting out of your September. I'll give you a 3-1 record. I think you win pretty easily against Central Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and Eastern Michigan. However, I do think you take a loss against South Carolina on the road. And that one I went back and forth on. But I think South Carolina is going to be pretty much the same skill level as Missouri next season. And so I think with South Carolina being at home, that's going to give them the advantage there. As far as your October goes, I'm going to give you 2-2. You're going to take a loss against Tennessee on the road. I think Tennessee next season, I'm kind of on the hype train for them. I think that they're going to be a great team. Jeremy Pruitt's doing a great job over there, and I really think that offense in general, same with the defense, they just could be really good next season. And if you looked at how much Tennessee improved over last season, that is enough evidence for you to really believe that Tennessee could be a great team next season. And I think with them having to go on the road to Tennessee, I just don't think it's going to happen there. I do think you get a win at BYU the next week, though, so that's good. And then you got a loss against Georgia, I think, at home. That one's going to be close, though. Watch out for that one. I think Missouri could show up in that one and put up a big fight, considering they'll have the experience of two pretty tough road games. Then I also think you get a win the next week against Kentucky at home. So your record coming into November will be 5-3. All you got to do to make a bowl game is win one of your last four, and I really do believe that happens. I do think you lose your first two games in November, though, both of your road trips against Mississippi State and Florida. However, I think you get two easy wins against Louisiana and Arkansas to finish off the season. So overall, your schedule is not bad at all. You don't have a big string of really difficult games at all. It's really good, too, to finish off the season, especially if you're going to a bowl game with two easier ones with Louisiana and Arkansas, because that will help you get healthier. And then also, just in general, will give you more momentum going into the postseason. So, yeah, for Missouri, overall, looks like a good schedule for them, and that's going to help them get up to a 7-5 record. And that's kind of what I'm thinking next season. I think Missouri does make it to a bowl game. I think they do make it to a pretty decent one. Of course, last season, once again, they weren't able to make it to one due to a bowl ban, but I do expect it to happen this season. I think the schedule definitely warrants that, and I definitely think there are easily 7 pretty winnable games on this schedule. The only questionable win that I'd probably put on here would be that BYU game. Of course, I kind of went back and forth on that one too, because you have to go to Tennessee, and then you have to turn right around and go to BYU. That's quite a road trip, and so I think that one could be a tough game for sure, but I do expect Missouri to kind of pull it out in the end. And so, once again, record prediction is going to be 7-5 for Missouri. And with that about wraps up our predictions on Missouri. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team. Let me know whether you think any differently. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But yeah, once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around. Be sure to stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. And if you enjoyed this preview as well, be sure to slap a like on it and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel, and I'd appreciate that a ton. But yeah, as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more. I will see you all later.